Group Ironman has finally been announced and we will see the game mode come to us in the near future. However, there's still a lot of discussion to be done as we, as the community, have a lot of input on how the game mode is going to work due to Jagex's new communication strategy. And Mr. IronAraxxor made a very good video on this, talking about the things that he would like to see, and I thought I'd make my response video to his, but also share my own concerns and ideas for the game mode in a big, long commentary. And I do want to hear from you as well in the comment section down below. What do you want to see from Group Ironman? What do you not want to see from Group Ironman? Obviously, things like no MTX and stuff, I think speaks for itself and functioning like Ironman does in the overall sense of how the game mode functions. But what are some details? Do you want to see things like shared quest progression? Do you want to see things like tradable clue scrolls or whatever it might be? Let me know. Also leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and my excuses for my voice. I have a cold, there's nothing I can do about it, but I really do want to get this video out as of me making this video today, because quite frankly, it's a discussion I've been itching to talk about, because I have some strong opinions about this. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, as Mr. Protect would say, as we talk about Group Ironman. Before we get into my own personal opinion and concerns about this game mode, as I've been thinking for the longest time that Group Ironman is a flawed game mode and mainly caters to content creators, coming from someone who has 52 days game time as a Group Ironman in old school RuneScape, as I know I'm a content creator but I don't create content for it, and obviously my response to IronAraxxor. Don't worry, it will not be any drama. I even messaged him if he minds me making a response video, and after that we had a call for about 2.5 hours talking about the game mode, which was a lot of fun, and actually changed how this video is going to be working, so thank IronAraxxor for it, and go check out his video after this one, please. Anyway, I think it's important we lay out how Group Ironman works in old school RuneScape, as that will probably function as the baseline for how it will function in RuneScape 3. And actually, there are advisors from the old school RuneScape team that developed Group Ironman that will be working with RuneScape 3 to kind of share their thoughts and the things they ran into whilst developing it and whilst it rolled out in the game, which I think is really, really good, and obviously us as a community with input. So how does Group Ironman work in old school RuneScape? Well, obviously you have the hardcore and regular Ironman distinction between the two modes, but you also have prestige and non-prestige, which only applies to normal Group Ironman. Prestige mode is pretty much you and the people that start the team will get a prestige, aka a blue helm, and will be on the high scores for Group Ironman depending on your group size, and only new accounts can join your group to keep your prestige, aka the blue helm, and the prestige of the group itself. If you add an existing account, then you will lose your prestige. It's pretty much just a rank thing and it doesn't really matter, but if you are an unranked non-prestige hardcore or Group Ironman, you will be able to just add any Group Ironman to your team and fill up spaces that might have been left vacant after someone quit or left. And I think that system is great, and I think that should just be copy and pasted from old school RuneScape, as I think that will solve the issue of people quitting and stopping, kind of, just a little bit. But there are also some things that can't be fixed and that I think need to be discussed, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit later. But one thing that I do find very important, and is something that Jagex needs to establish themselves, is what do they want out of this game mode? Do they want this game mode to be a long-term new way to play RuneScape, something that we can be enjoying for years and years to come? Or do they want this to be a game mode that you can play for a couple of months, have a little bit of fun with your friends, and then go back to your other accounts? Because I think that is an incredible important decision to be made, because that will really determine on how you're going to be tackling it. If you want this to be a game mode for the long term, you can't really give things like boosts and buffs and whatever to Group Ironman, because that ruins the spirit of what Ironman's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the more challenging game mode that in Group Ironman is already made easier by being able to play with other people. However, if they want this to be a short-term fun thing that you can do and play with your friends for a few months, then yeah, something like boost buffs, shared progression, etc. would be an incredible feature. And I think that is a really important thing, and we will kind of go into more detail with once we talk about IronAraxxor's point. But let me kind of talk about why people play group Ironman to begin with, as I also think that is important to understand when we go into my own personal concerns and just a general discussion as well about the subject. Obviously, one thing is just fun. It's fun to play the game with your friends, right? Like, it doesn't really matter which game it is. You can play the worst game in the world, but if you play it with friends, it is fun. And that goes for group Ironman as well. But obviously, you can also just have fun by both playing your own Ironman and just playing the game whilst you're on Discord. At least, I think so. I don't think that is really differentiator there, because let's be honest, RuneScape is kind of a solo game where you just get your own progression, and that is the fun of it. And with group Ironman, there is another aspect to it, which is shared progression. I mean, you can share gear, obviously, but you could also dedicate certain roles to people. Like, I'm the crafter in my group Ironman on old school RuneScape, where I got 93 crafting to craft the Zenites, which is old school RuneScape's equivalent of Hydrixes. And my other friend, he does all the Herblore stuff. And that way we can just boost each other up to get that gear a lot quicker than just slowly leveling up ourselves, right? Which is an amazing feature, which I think is a little bit less relevant in RuneScape 3. It's still relevant, but obviously progression in RuneScape 3 is quite a bit quicker on many aspects, especially on buyable skills, to an extent on Ironman mode itself. Like crafting, for example, you just do gem mines and it's not that slow. Like it's actually quite decently fast. It's boring. I've done it, but it's not as bad as crafting lantern lenses, which I made about 90,000 of. So yeah, that is fun. But I think the main appeal, in old school RuneScape at least, that was the main appeal for me personally, was the PVM together. As, especially mid-game PVM with, Godward's Dungeon and that kind of stuff, if you were to do that on a solo Ironman, you'd be looking at getting 40 KC, doing about 2, if you're lucky, 3 kill trips, and then going again. And if you go for something like Bandos and you go on raid, which is 1 in 512 by the way, you have to do that about 200 times, and that sucks. And that will take about, 50 to 100 hours, if not more, to get full Bandos if you do it alone, if you can't do like the whole prayer flicking method and all the other insanely difficult stuff. And that to me was the main appeal to do, group Ironman on old school RuneScape, was so that I can PVM together with my friends. And I think that is the appeal to a lot of people when they choose between Ironman modes and group Ironman modes. And I think it's a bit of a, if I would have to put percentages on it, I think it's 65% or 70% of the people main appeal would be to PVM together, and the other percentages would be for shared progression. At least from my personal point of view, right? But that kind of leaves us into my concerns about this game mode and why I think it's flawed, but also why it's not really needed on RuneScape 3 is PVMing together is already a feature for Ironman, right? You can even do that with mains. And I think that is okay. And when that update went live, I think last year or 2 years ago, I don't remember, where it allowed you to PVM together with other Ironmans in any situation, I was really happy for it because, to be honest, at that point, I didn't really expect them to release Group Ironman. I think I even made a video on that update saying that this would be the nail in the coffin for Group Ironman. Guess I was wrong. I mean, clearly it wasn't because it's coming out. But I think that is taking away one of the main appeals for Group Ironman, at least in my opinion, as it already is a feature within RuneScape 3. But that is not the worst thing, right? I think shared progression will still be there, and it will obviously be a feature, and that is still a big appeal, and I guess would become a bigger appeal to a lot of people. Yet again, from my personal point of view, right? I want to hear from you as well. Where definitely something that needs to be addressed is the untradables. Thankfully, they are already aware of it. And when I talk about untradables, I talk about things like overloads and augmented gear and stuff, because let's be honest, it would be a bit awkward when you augment your gear and then you need to unaugment it again to share it with your group. That kind of defeats the whole point of one of the major pillars that we just established for Group Ironman is sharing your progression when it comes to gear. So I just hope that they will make it so that augmented gear will be tradable between Group Ironman, and that will just make it a lot better and will fix pretty much that issue. However, one issue that I don't think can be fixed is when people quit. Because quite frankly, that is something that affects the team massively. I think it's an unfixable issue, as I think it's just how life goes, right? Even with the ability of others joining, like if you start a group with your in real life friends, you probably don't even have that many in real life friends that actually play RuneScape, so it probably will be already hard to form a group. But let's say you're like me, you formed a group with 4 of your online friends. Well, actually, it was 3 in real life friends, or 2 in real life friends, and an online friend that was also Dutch that joined our group. There will always be an imbalance, and it just kind of is what it is. There's nothing you can really do about it, right? Because if you look at your friend group, right? Let's say you have 2 other friends you're going to start a group Ironman with. One friend will probably have less time than you, and one might even have more time than you. And you can always argue, well, okay, then the guy who has more time can do like the longer grinds, and I do the mid grinds, and he does the slower grinds. But what I found in my group, and what I found in a lot of other groups that I talk to, is that what usually happens is that that friend that grinds a little bit less feels, I don't want to say left out, because, for example, we still would get like 3 of all the items once the 4th member actually left, because he got hacked, and yeah, a bit of an issue there. But we are a 3-man group Ironman, but we still try to get 3 items everywhere because we don't want to feel our friend left out. But then again, he also kind of gets the feeling that he is leeching a little bit, or that he's not really helping the group in any way, because that's the fun part about group Ironman, is actually being a part of the group and having a specific role, right? Like, it feels great for me to be able to craft all the high tier jewelry, and it feels great for my friend who got the herb lore to be able to get all the levels. But that other friend that can play a little bit less because he has a full-time job and other things going on in his life, he feels left behind. And that's okay, because, it's not okay because we are not purposely trying to leave behind. But should me and my other friend who have more time stop playing? No, because we are having fun and enjoying it. And then that gap keeps building and building and building. And then the third friend will probably eventually quit, right? And this is just an example that I'm giving, as this might be different in your own group that you've had on Old School RuneScape, or in your friend group, or you might not really care yourself about being behind as long as you can do the fun content with your friends. Like, it just depends on your point of view. But I do think that because RuneScape is such a progression-based video game, that it's something that kind of takes away one of the main aspects of the game, right? Is if you are left behind the progression, and pretty much all the progression is done for you, because, well, you don't have to grind out this boss anymore. You don't have to grind out herb lore anymore. You don't have to grind out crafting anymore, because it's already done for you. It kind of becomes pretty much a main account in a way, where, let's be honest, on a main account, one of the biggest issues for a lot of skills is, why would I do this skill besides for quest requirements, diary requirements, or, well, level 99 so I can get my max cape, right? I think that's a big issue for many, many skills when you play a main. And that kind of makes Group Ironman mode a content creator game mode, because content creators usually have equivalent amounts of time where they can spend and grind out and make content on it. And in Old School RuneScape, it quite frankly already is a content creator game mode. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Group Ironmans, but I do think a lot of Group Ironmans fall apart before they even get to a point where it's actually fun. Like, if you go on Reddit, for example, I know it's not the best source for Ironman, you see so many posts of like, oh, my group Ironman quit, oh, we are here, oh, yada yada yada, what happened? And it's sad to read, and it's things that happen, and I think it's unfortunately something you can't fix without creating other issues. And that kind of leads me perfectly into my RS3 response, because I disagree with some things that he's saying, but I also do agree with a lot of things he's saying, and it kind of is mainly to do with how to fix the issue of people quitting and making this game a fun game mode and everyone to be involved. It needs to be different. Group Ironman mode on RuneScape 3 needs to be different from the Ironman mode that is on Old School RuneScape. Not only because they're 2 different games, but also because if you copy and paste it, you will have the same issues as you have with Group Ironman mode on Old School RuneScape, but I think you will have an accumulative or an additive issue with the whole idea of Group PVM, because Group PVM isn't one of the major appeals anymore of Group Ironman, as it already is available on normal Ironman. So why would you play a Group Ironman over a normal Ironman if it is just copy and pasted from Old School RuneScape? Probably you don't, unless you really care about the whole shared progression stuff. So yes, I do agree with RuneAraxxor that things need to change. And one of the things that he says that could spice up Group Ironman mode a little bit, which I think is really cool and I agree with, is Group Ironmans should not be allowed with others unless it's required. For example, at like big team raids, like for example the raid that we have in this game. Like, it makes sense that obviously if you are a 5-man group, it's impossible to do 9-man content and you should not be locked out of it. But I think anything else that allows you to go in with your group, but that has 5 people, it should be pretty much required that you're not allowed to go with other people. And especially with as many good law things, adding that would be really, really cool, especially if you do that for prestige accounts. You can maybe have prestige account be the more restricted, you can only do this with your group account type of game mode, and you have unprestige for, you know what, just have fun, PVM with anyone who you like, whatever stuff. Like, you can easily use the prestige system to also include that, and I think that is a great idea. And something that I think they should really add. I even think that from my personal point of view, that hardcore group Ironman should be extremely restricted, where maybe you're not allowed to do certain types of content like D&Ds, because as I said, I think they're too overpowered, and you're really required to just get your progression from skilling and, you know, doing bossing and that kind of stuff, and you're not really allowed to do even lamps maybe from quests, to make it like a really difficult game mode for the people who are searching for an actual challenge. When it comes to progression in RuneScape 3. I'm not saying Ironman mode in itself is not a challenge, but I think that would add even more challenge to it, right? And something else I really do agree with Mr. IronAraxxor is that augmented gear obviously should be tradable, degradables should be tradable too, and overloads should be tradable. Because, as I said earlier, untradable gear is a way bigger topic in RuneScape 3 than it is in old school RuneScape, and it definitely needs to be addressed, and I think that all of that needs to be addressed. But IronAraxxor brought up another point that I really do not agree with, and that is tradable clue scrolls. I don't really not agree with it, but I'm just not sure about it. I understand that obviously if someone enjoys doing clue scrolls, like myself, it would be nice if you can get all the clue scrolls from the group and just test out clue scrolls. But then again, it's also one of those things like, where do you draw that line? What other untradables will be tradable? Will that be skilling outfits? Will that be certain items that, you know, might function weirdly because of that? Like, there's so many caveats there, and I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope. I just don't like that idea. I think clue scrolls in itself are already very powerful, even on an Ironman, and they're simple to do. And I'm just not sure about it, but I'm more leaning to just keep them untradable, but I wouldn't be too upset if they were tradable, right? And one thing that he mentions in his video, and something that kind of inspired me to make this response video, is his whole shared completion thing, where, for example, if you complete a quest, the quest is completed for the entire group, and you can share quest items, and you can share all sorts of untradable things to do with quest and completion and whatever. And I think that is just a bad idea. Because, quite frankly, and hold up, before we get into why I think it's a bad idea, he also said that he would want passive unlocks or abilities to also be shareable when you, for example, get an ability codex, use it, and your entire group unlocks it. And where I think that would be fun, and I think that would fit in if Jagex wants to make this a more couple-month fun type of game mode instead of a long-term game mode, then I think these ideas are really good and make it so much more fun. But if they want this to be a long-term game mode, I think this will absolutely ruin the game mode. As I said before, I think progression in RuneScape is the main appeal to a lot of people. Getting 80 woodcutting is very boring because, let's be honest, most gameplay in RuneScape, besides PVM, active cluing, and certain skilling activities, is very boring. Like, cutting a tree to level 80 is not fun. Like, let's be honest. But what is fun is when you get 80, you can do whatever quest needs that requirement, that gives you an unlock that makes PVM better. That is the fun thing. So that kind of makes woodcutting fun. But the actual action, the actual doing of woodcutting isn't really fun, is it now? Like, there's not really that much excitement when you cut down a tree. At least not for me. It might be for you. But it's the progression that you make. And one thing that I feel like if you do something like quest completion for all group members or just shared progression in general, you take away from the progression from that one group member that can play a little bit less. Imagine you're gone for a week or something, or you can only play on the weekends or something, and your group Ironman started on Monday, or well, the previous weekend is probably more realistic, right? And then they play from Monday to Friday, and you maybe played a few hours in the evenings, and then suddenly your entire group is like 1.4k total or 1.5k total, has like a buttload of quests on, and you have to quest on, and maybe you even get like extra experience buffs to train up your skills, or you got all the quest rewards on your skills automatically, and then it kind of feels like you haven't done anything, like you haven't progressed your account. It's like when you get given money in RuneScape, a lot of people that are watching this are probably like, oh, I would love to be given a billion GP right now because that would be fun. Trust me, as someone who has 1.5 billion cash just sitting there and has pretty much best in slot gear for everything, it's boring. Because quite frankly, why are you PVMing? The only reason why you might be PVMing is maybe to dye your items or to get a party hat or something. But if you don't really care about it, then there's not really a point in the game. Like, I think what a lot of people don't realize, and sometimes I don't realize whilst I'm in that position, is the fun part about this game is chasing the gear, it's chasing those upgrades, it's chasing whatever. Because that is what RuneScape is. It's setting goals, achieving them, to then set new goals. And I think if you have shared progression in any way, shape, or form, where it's so overpowered pretty much, where one group member can literally not play and still keep up, where I think it solves the issue of people feeling left behind, it creates the issue of that person just not enjoying the game because they're not playing the game pretty much. And on the flip side of that is, if you are just lacking behind and just not on the level of your group mates, then that feels bad as well because, well, they can do PVMing, but you cannot do PVMing, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. I think it's an unfixable issue, and that's where Jagex needs to step in and say, look, we are going to make this a temporary, well, not temporary, but like a short-term game mode, or we are going to make it a long-term game mode. Because if it's a long-term game mode, I think you should keep it as pure as you can when it comes to Group Ironman. Maybe add some like cool little things where there's some Group Ironman buffs or something, like maybe drop rate buffs or something when you go do certain group bosses with your Group Ironman. Not like ridiculous amounts of buff, but like that slight incentive to actually go with your group member, instead of it just being, okay, you, person one, goes to Vindicta, and then I go to Hellweir, and then hopefully around the same time we have enough gear for everyone, right? Instead, it would be good if you have like maybe like a 10% increase if you actually go to Group Ironman, that it has a little bit of effect, but it isn't big enough of an effect where it like ruins progression, at least in my opinion. But if you are looking at this from a temporary game mode, then I think you need to go with IronAraxxor's approach and go absolutely balls to the walls with these, you know, buffs and whatever. I don't think, you know, shared quest completion and that kind of stuff would be fun, at least in my opinion, and I also think it might actually cause some issues here and there. I'm not sure, because you have to also code that. Anyway, like, that is something that is technical, and I don't know if it will work. They can probably make it work, right? But I think a better idea might actually be that, let's say I'm level 70 and you're level 50, right? And in a skill. And when you're level 50, you just get a 20% buff that just ticks down to 19, 18, 17, depending on how many levels you're off, percent buff in experience to kind of catch up a little bit quicker to your groupmate. I think that could be a nice feature where you can strike a balance of it being fast and still be reasonable, but also not fast where it's pretty much you get double experience if you are low level than your groupmate, because then, yeah, just issues arise, right? Because if you feed one member to get level 80 and then you get double XP until you are at their level, you pretty much use like so little supplies, and it takes away, like, I don't think the game mode should be extremely grindy or something, but I do think there should be some sort of grind there. And I just hope to see something different, whatever that might be, even if it's some sort of leaks aspect when they do decide to actually make it a short-term game mode, or make it more challenging if you make it a longer-term game mode, but maybe add some little incentives, like I said, with the drop rate increase, or maybe even slight experience buffs. Like I've seen the whole thing of like, oh, if you're skilling with your group irons, like if you're skilling together, you get like a little buff, which I think is actually cool. Like I think that is fine, but I think anything extreme like IronAraxxor is suggesting is only suitable if they are willing to make this a more short-term game mode. And that's kind of my opinion on everything. As I said, like I'm very much on the fence. I think it's a flawed game mode to begin with, as it mainly caters to content creators because they have time and they are, you know, kind of tied to actually progressing the account because they make content on it, versus, you know, regular people where I think it just causes issues and maybe even friction within friend groups. And yeah, that's just my opinion on the whole matter. I know it's a bit of a longer video and I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. Leave a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new. My name's Chevalric. See you guys in my next video.